Hey everybody, welcome to the Expedition 1 podcast. I have a special guest today. His name is Mike Glover from Fieldcraft Survival. Am I getting all that right?
That's all right.
That's right.
All right.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Saw you on Joe Rogan.
Awesome.
Listened to it on a road trip. I think Will and I did.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good podcast, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I got good feedback from that. I'm never critical of podcasts I do, but that podcast I was like, I wonder if I did a decent job.
Well, that's a big podcast.
It's huge.
Right?
Yeah, it was huge. It's a huge podcast.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was good. I learned a lot of stuff about you, which kind of
Awesome.
was like the whole like you're kind of a domestic terrorist, but not.
I know. I know.
Like, that's pretty crazy, man.
It is a crazy experience, and I'm kind of glad it's behind us now. It's been behind us for a while, but it was a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how it was going to sort itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so weird. You know what I mean?
So weird.
It's kind of one of those bizarre things that I wouldn't have expected. Well, that was like the thing that kind of like shocked me when I was listening. I'm like, how does this even work? Like, did they put you on a no-fly list or anything like that?
Yeah. So I think I was definitely on a no-fly list. But it was like a flag you to secondary, basically flag you to another like conversation, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? It's like, hey, I'm traveling, because that's what I do. I travel across the U.S. for business. And what it is, I think, what people don't understand now, that's very different today because of technology and social media, is they identified me as like, hey, this guy's potentially something. We don't know what it is. So you get flagged. And it's similar to like the idea of a red flag law. So without the law, you're flagged, and then they make the assumption. And whether that's an analyst or a guy who's an open source doing intelligence reviews, basic information, open source information. And he goes, I perceive this guy as maybe potentially being bad. And I don't know how I could define that, but he's bad. That gets dropped down into a chain of communication to big tech. And so the main players, Google, Facebook, who owns Instagram, all these players get notified. And in fact, Shopify, how we lost our Shopify was via that same notification.
Yeah.
So they say, hey, this guy is somebody we're paying attention to, which means like without due process, what does that mean? Well, it means you just get canceled off of all those platforms.
Yeah.
So that's what was happening. Constant canceling. And because I had an insider in Facebook where I was calling my buddy and going, hey, dude, what's going on? He's like, dude, I don't know. You're getting flagged as like a domestic terrorist. Like literally it says that. I'm like, well, can you reinstate me? Yeah, let me work it. So then he would reinstate me. So we were fighting it behind the scenes. But ultimately it turned out like the claim was completely unwarranted. I think the proof in that claim, we made it through all of the dramatic things that happened in the country, including January 6th and all this drama that happened in the country.
Right.
So we weren't part of any of that. So I think through time, they went, oh, I guess this guy's not a bad guy.
Oh, okay.
And then they're like, relinquish control, whatever that means in big tech. After Joe Rogan's podcast, the next day, my Facebook American Contingency group page got restored.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, so it takes Joe Rogan's podcast to get anything moved or anything done. And Shopify still hasn't restored their account. I thought they would, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. It was all dramatic.
So
for nothing.
You had to have the right, it's having the right reach, that's what it had to have been. The right eyes finally seeing it, the right people going, hey, wait a minute, why is this happening?
And it's probably related to like, hey, we don't want to lose a lot of profit here. We could potentially lose a lot.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was philanthropic. Maybe they're feeling like, hey, let's look into this. That's right. He was deleted and canceled. Let's restore it. I just thought it was crazy.
Governments, when you get into systems like that, where you're talking about governments and then corporate structures, there's a point where they just get big and they become so big that it's like, if somebody's having a problem, I mean, I think about the stuff that I do, right? And it's one of those where a lot of times I won't hear about a problem until it's become a really big problem. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's, I've got 15 people, you know what I mean? Imagine having 30,000 people that is working for a company or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I think you're exactly right. Because, a lot of I thought Facebook was the devil until I heard Mark Zuckerberg like eloquently, like really communicate about the issues that he faces on Joe Rogan's podcast. And when I listened to him, I went, man, it's tough. Because I had my own forum, American Contingency, that we went live on a channel called Locals, which was bought out by the Rumble guys.
Right, yeah.
But Locals, we were the biggest account on that. I mean, we were doing 6 figures a month. We were the biggest account on that entire platform overnight.
Wow.
And so we were dealing with a whole bunch of people and trying to moderate human beings. And for the first time, I felt empathy for social media and went, man, this is difficult. Like, who's spam? Who's here for the wrong reasons? Who's toxic? Who's doing illegal activity? All these things you have to manage by yourself. And the difficulty with us is we were moderating it with a couple people. I can't imagine, what that looks like with billions of people on the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I'm glad that it's behind you.
Me too.
That's nice.
I am too.
That's a huge bonus.
Yeah. People were like, oh, well, you get the popularity out of it. I was like, I never go into strategy meets and deliberate planning processes and go, let's look to, put us in a very toxic position for the sake of popularity.
Right.
So it's nothing we asked for, nothing I wanted. And I hope it never happens again.
Yeah. I'm right there with you on that one.
Yeah.
That's got to be a tough gig. I'm just glad what's the word? It starts with a P. You persevered. That's what it is.
That's a good word.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You persevered.
Yeah, we did. The team did as well.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So let's talk about Fieldcraft in general, right? If people don't know, I mean, I think a lot of people know who you guys are, particularly in the overland space, off-roading community. Everybody I know has heard of you.
Awesome.
But I mean, give me an idea of what this is about. I mean, obviously you're former military, right? You want to give me some background on what your story is?
Yeah, I did. So I did 4 years in the infantry. The rest is a special forces guy.
Was it like
Green
Army?
Beret? Yeah, Army Green Beret.
Okay.
Yeah. So
were you stationed here? Or?
I was stationed a couple places. I was stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah.
Most of my career. I was stationed at Fort Carson. I was in 10th Special Forces Group.
Okay.
And then I did some reserve time as a sergeant major in 19th Special Forces Group in Texas.
Okay.
So that's where I finished my career. And then I had a military career, did a whole bunch of cool stuff in the Army, and then transitioned to the reserve component where I was kind of part-timing it, which is an option for us to do as Green Berets. And then I was a CIA contractor for 3 years. I did the CIA.
Okay.
I was a GRS staff officer, a global response staff officer for the CIA for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that entail? Did you go in country, or is that more of like
bit
of a desk job?
Oh, it's definitely in country. It's like, so if you've seen the movie 13 Hours in Benghazi, all those guys literally, the majority of those guys recruited me into the CIA.
Okay.
Because I was on active duty in Libya post Benghazi, right after that happened.
Oh, wow.
And then I spent my job in the CIA doing that job, which is protecting case officers overseas. So I was in like Yemen, Pakistan, Iraq, all these fascinating places. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Okay.
It's
so
fun.
then you do all this cool stuff, and then you're like, hey, I'm just going to be a social media guy, and I'm going to start doing cool stuff and start a company where I teach people how to.
Yeah.
Is that how it worked?
Essentially, in a nutshell, it is how it worked. Like literally, I was just like, I'm over this. I was in Pakistan, I think, at the time, and I was pretty just worn down by the government.
Yeah.
I was tired. You couldn't pay me enough money, even though I got paid a lot of money. I mean, for somebody who was in the Army, not in it for the money, because you don't make a lot in the military. And then going to a job where I was contracting and not really working very hard. I mean, it's not a hard job. They're paying me for my resume. Right? They're paying me for my experiences and my resume. If things go wrong,
you know what to do.
I'm the guy, right? So, but I made 3 times what I made in the military in 60 days. I would make what I made in a year in the Army. So it was something very new to me. But what I realized, there was no amount of money that made me kind of settle on this feeling like, I don't feel like I'm living purpose. I'm not doing anything that's helping other people. And I've always felt that way. Like I needed to do something bigger than myself, help people, be involved in community, not on social media, because social media technically, until I left the CIA in the transition, I never had social media.
Yeah.
You know, like people are like, oh man, you've been on social media. It's like, I've been on social media since 2015, which is the first account I ever set up. Because when I was in the military, depending on where we were, I mean, some guys had them, but we couldn't post ourselves in uniform.
Right.
Like today, I mean, guys have active duty guys who are operators have accounts, which
sounds kind of crazy.
Well, I think it's changed now to where if you're the guy who doesn't have a social media account, then something stands out, right? Because you're the anomaly. So maybe something like that. But anyways, I didn't have social media. I got on it. And I remember when I got on social media and started posting, had no idea. I still don't know what I'm doing. I posted, and then I realized really quickly that I was one of few people in the world that I've seen from my community that was a modern global war on terror veteran, like a guy who served in Afghanistan and Iraq 9 times, and then went, oh, now I'm actually on social media. And people are like, holy crap, these guys are coming out of the shadows, or you're the quiet professional and now you're running your mouth. Like, that's not good. So all these different things. But I was one of the first guys on social media and started doing research on marketing and how this whole thing worked, because it was fairly new.
Right.
And just did it consistently, which I still do even today consistently, which is one of the reasons why I think we've grown. But yeah, Fieldcraft Survival, it's a company that's focused on preparing citizens for the worst case scenario. So that's the bottom line. It's like we do a lot, but everything has to fit in the mission set of preparing citizens for the worst case scenario.
Okay. So tell me more about, because this is interesting. So what is the worst case scenario when you say that? Like, because so standard citizen, most of us were just going about our lives. The probability of us running into a very drastic situation for most people is probably pretty limited, but then there is those people that are in those situations where maybe they've got like an ex-husband that is abusive, where maybe they've been exposed to something, maybe they lived a life at one point where it exposed them to danger and they're, at risk. Where does it fall into, like, who should be prepared? Who should be preparing themselves more than anybody else? Or is it everybody should just be prepared? I mean, it's the Boy Scout motto, right? Is be prepared. But I mean, from your take, is who really benefits from your training?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that question kind of lines out the philosophy of how we position preparedness in the first place. Because if I say worst case scenario, immediately people think a zombie apocalypse. They think the end of days. They think The Walking Dead. That's worst case. But if you look at statistical probabilities, which we certainly analyze and assess, cardiovascular event is going to kill you more than anything, right? It kills more people in this country than anything by far, leaps and bounds. So if you look at just the baseline, if being fit, being healthy and well leads to better outcomes and higher survivability rates, then that's what we're talking about. Because, I mean, when you trickle down, the more technical you get, I think the more interested people get, because it potentially could affect their lives. Like guys, for example, are very interested in the concept or the training around a gunfight, the equipment, the training, all the things, because it's sexy. But the odds of you getting a gunfight in self-defense are very low.
Right.
You take that compared to first aid events, accidents, vehicle accidents, especially. You're an off-roader like me. When you go off-roading, how many times have you seen potentially injury or accidents happen in the field? I mean, I was just in Moab during Eastern Jeep Safari, and there was a serious accident, right? So when you look at those, most people won't carry a tourniquet on their person, right? But I'll carry a tourniquet on my person because I know if I don't have a tourniquet and I need it, I'm not willing to live with myself in the event that somebody, hopefully it's potentially me and not somebody else I love, perishes because of a simple piece of equipment that stops the bleed and a 5-minute block of instruction on how to apply a tourniquet.
Right.
Right. So guys will weigh that and they'll carry the gun because it's cool, but they don't weigh it against all probability of survival. Right. So when I say worst case scenario, the reason it's compelling is because it's the extreme. It's the fringe. Mm-hmm. But I say worst case because if you prepare for worst case scenarios, for example, stopping the bleed of a major arterial bleed, mm-hmm. then you have the equipment potentially to address all the issues between the worst case and trickling down everything in between, mm-hmm. right? So I think the mindset is, one, catastrophe, disaster is an equal opportunist. It doesn't care who you are. Mm-hmm. And we can't plan for every eventuality. We live in a very comfortable, complacent universe, which is great because it's a byproduct of freedom, a byproduct of, I think, a lot of people sacrifice, including your father who fought in Vietnam. And then when you take that, you go, man, maybe if I'm just more conscious, more aware, more prepared, I'm less anxious, I'm mm-hmm. less paranoid, I'm less fearful. And that's what I found. Like many people who don't understand the whole concept of this idea of preparedness, they think, oh, you're paranoid, right? But they think that because they're not educated and they don't understand what that means to be prepared. Mm-hmm. What it basically means in a nutshell is having information, tools, equipment, training to be able to respond and react to a worst case scenario mm-hmm. at the time in which it happens. Mm-hmm. If you have that, you're not paranoid, you're confident. Your posture is a different way. Mm-hmm. And that in itself, whether it's mindset, whether it's behavioral dynamics, whether it's the way you present yourself to the world, is the first steps in preparedness, right? Mm-hmm. And it's nothing you could part-time. A lot of people are like, well, yeah, I did the tourniquet class or did the training class. It's not a hobby. It is a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You have to constantly be tuned into it. Like when we were standing around that bumper talking about recovery points on the bumper on the F350, that truck that you guys are putting your equipment on, I am teaching overland mobility experience courses, which we teach recovery and maintenance and everything else. We're tuned into that because those are the points that matter in the worst case scenario. Is it 100% of the experience? No, it's like 0.001% of the experience, hopefully.
Right.
But if that something happens, that steel bumper, those attachment points, and the attention to that detail is going to matter and potentially mean the difference between like somebody getting injured or potentially killed mm-hmm. or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time. It happens all the time in this kind of line of work of extreme off-roading or overlanding in the backcountry in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think, and you're bringing up a good point because I think it's a growing market.
Yeah.
It's lots of people are getting into this. I think COVID drove a lot of people into mm-hmm. it too, because it was just like, what else are we going to do? Well, let's go outside. And I think that's great. What you're seeing though is, and the concern that I bring with it or see from it is you have more people going out. They're used to having cell service everywhere they go. They're used to being able to have the communications they need. And then they're out in a place and then they don't know what to do if a situation arises. I mean, you're talking about stuff that makes a lot of sense. Like we used to say, like a winch is an insurance policy. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's not there because you're necessarily using it every single day. Mm-hmm. It's there if you need it. And when the time arises and you need a winch and you don't have it, mm-hmm. that can be a really bad situation. That mm-hmm. could mean a lot of walking. That could mean in a bad scenario, that could mean freezing to death.
Yes.
So that falls right into that category. That's kind of like my side of it, right? So once upon a time, I was an EMT.
Oh, nice.
I didn't really work as an EMT. I got all my training and everything like that and did some volunteer stuff, very little stuff. But that has come into handy for me a bunch of times in just the weirdest situations, right? You're just sitting there and all of a sudden something happens. I wonder sometimes, is it because I have the training that I have to be in the spot?
I know, right? It feels that way.
Yeah. But it's being able to react in the moment and know what to do. I remember one time I was at Powder Mountain and this kid, I was about to hit a kicker and I'm like, I'm going to go around. Something just told me to go around. It was a little bit of a day where I couldn't see that well either. So I was worried about my landing. Came around the side and there was a bunch of people huddled around this kid just laying there. He was just laying like this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching what they're doing, and they try and lift him up, and I'm like, oh, whoa, no, 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 no. I pop off my board and I go over there. I'm like, whoa, whoa, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're just trying to get him on his feet. And I'm like, is he even conscious? What happened? And you're like, oh, he hit the jump and he crashed. And I'm like, don't move him.
Oh my gosh.
Don't lay him down. It was his friends. And so I said, lay him down, don't touch him. And he was not conscious. He was kind of in and out.
Oof.
And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, you don't want to move him. You want to get, we need a sled here so we can get him down. The weird part is the ski patrol went to the wrong area, but the more and more this kid, he started coming out of it, the more and more he sat there and everything, he started coming out of it. He was not with it. It took him a while to figure out what was going on, but he definitely hit his head pretty hard.
Oof.
And so he's like, I think I'm just going to go down. And I'm like, okay, look, here's the thing. And I checked him out and I'm like, I don't feel anything weird with your neck or anything like that. But I'm like, look, dude, you need to go right to the hospital right now. Don't mess around with this.
Yeah.
Even if you start feeling better and you start remembering stuff, you literally need to go to the hospital right now. Ski patrol did not come. You have to, the only way you're going to get to the top is by going to the bottom and back up. I told his friends to monitor him. I told him but he needs to go to the hospital now. I hope that's what they did.
Yeah.
Right. But, we'll see how that goes. I mean, cause that's like Liam Neeson's wife. That's how she died. Right. Yeah. She hit her head.
Brain bleed.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, I'm fine. It's just a headache. And
gone.
That was it. And it's just, it's very interesting, how delicate we really are as humans. It's like, we're pretty robust, but in the end, we're very delicate at the same time. And it doesn't take much. I think, most of us want to be tough, which is good. I think we want to be tough and rugged, but man, if we are fragile. If you misguess something, and it's also knowing the signs of stuff, right? It's knowing, are your pupils equal and reactive, right? That's a simple thing. You can test that with your phone. I do that with my kids like all the time because they hit their heads, right? But knowing these little things that are not common knowledge can make a huge difference in somebody's life. So, and that's, effectively, that's kind of what you do, right? You're teaching a lot of those basic skills. It's not all about guns and all that kind of stuff. It's literally just survivability of when something can happen. Right.
It's I would say guns is like the minority of anything we teach. And people on the surface have said, oh, Mike's that tactical guy. It's like, what's my background? It's my background. But the question of starting Fieldcraft survival or preparedness business derived from my curiosity of like, how do a group of men, rangers, special forces guys, go into harm's way deliberately and intentionally into the worst case scenario? I mean, landing a helicopter on top of a roof full of foreign fighters wanting to kill you is definitely the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
How do you intentionally do that? And then how do you come out on top? How do you come out unscathed? And most people would say, oh, because you know how to shoot, move, communicate. You know all the tactics, CQB, whatever it is. I was like, it's none of that. It's everything collectively. It's the culture, it's the community, it's the trust in one another, it's the resilience, it's the mindset, it's the fitness, it's the attention to detail, it's the planning, it's the contingency planning, it's the paying attention to the right equipment for the job. It's the rehearsals, all the checks, all those things. So when you look at that, preparedness should be a process through a culture, not necessarily a technical hobby or skill set.
Yeah.
Because it takes an active, conscious person to be tuned in a very, technologically saturated world where we're distracted constantly.
Yes.
And I think when you look at stats across the board, a lot of people are losing their lives because of the distractions they have immersed in technology. Because we forgot, like, oh yeah, there's this primal sense or this ancestral sense of being available to adapt and to make change and to see the oncoming car or whatever it is, but we're too distracted. So I think collectively, a lot of people perceive us to be one thing, and then when they get into the fold, whether it's an academic experience of learning how to can and jar, learning family preparedness, we do it all from canning and jarring to resilience experiences. We do it all. So it's like Preparedness is complicated, and as a business, even more so.
Yeah, there's nothing terribly sexy about canning and jarring.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Try to get a whole bunch of gunfighter guys to show up to a canning and jarring class and pay for it.
Yeah. The first thing that like pops in my head is somebody's mom, just like, okay,
that's it. If I thought about this once, I was like, we'll do the jars and multicam. Because if we have multicam jars, the guys will think it's cool.
No, seriously, that's what you got to do.
You have to.
I think you just got yourself another business idea right here.
You have to. Black multicam jars for canning and jarring.
I think you might have something. Let's make canning sexy again.
We have to. That should be a bumper sticker at a minimum.
Yeah. That's a T-shirt right there.
T-shirt.
I just got you a T-shirt.
That's it. I'll make $10
Fieldcraft
at
Survival.
least.
Yeah.
I'll buy one for myself.
Make canning sexy again right there.
I actually like that. Making jarring sexy again.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it. I'm looking forward to it. I'll buy one too. So let's talk about your rig that you got out here. Right? It's F350. Yeah. It's big.
It is big.
That camper is big.
It's massive. It's massive. I don't know how I'm going to get in that thing now with my kids, especially. Like the kids, I could pick them up, put them in it.
Yeah.
But it's like, how am I going to get up in that thing?
It's a big step stool, man.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
No, that's going to be cool though.
Yeah. Yeah. The intent, so it's a Super Duty quad cab with a 9-foot bed.
Yeah.
And Brent from Bowen Customs, they're good friends of ours. They make a great flatbed setup with drawers. And the goal for me was, one, we teach out of those rigs.
Right.
Me and Mike Hernandez teach overland mobility experiences all over the country. And when you have a rig, you need to have kind of all the capability, capacity, and you need to be able to use it for students. So we need the drawers to fit up, maintenance and recovery systems for all the students. We might need to transport ammo for our security block of training and have all the ammo and all the guns. So I kind of went to Brent with a concept and said, hey man, this is what I wanted to do. And he had a Bowen, he had his setup on a 9-foot bed with a Scout camper.
Okay.
And he said, Scout, so far out of all the companies I've seen, the drawbacks are the height. It's super tall. One of the benefits is it's all aluminum, so it's super lightweight. And so when you look at the totality of the build, from you guys' front bumper, which I wanted a steel front bumper. We talked about that a little bit. I mean, we're in the backcountry of Utah. I mean, I saw 5 elk on the way here from my house in Heber, and you hit an elk in a Super Duty without a front bumper.
Yeah.
Good luck. I mean, even good luck avoiding seriously bodily injury.
Yeah.
Because here in Utah, a moose or an elk will walk straight across the highway where you're going 75 miles an hour.
Yep.
And they'll come straight off the hill where you can't see them coming because they're elevated. They'll come down, they'll hit it, and then you always have, this season we've already had tragic accidents where people get killed from moose, elk, deer, whatever it is.
Wow.
So I wanted steel, and I was willing to compromise that weight to be able to do recovery points, to break through obstacles. And also I wanted the cattle guard, which, it's a loop that allows you to get over the radiator. But I also, I work on remote locations, and I like to overland in remote locations where there's actually cattle. There's cows all over Utah, land lease agreements and BLM. So moving the way back, we put a Carly suspension on it. I think that's the first truck in the country with the adaptive system that's electronic from the cab.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of the system, but as far as I know, it's never been put on a overland full duty setup. It's been put on full duty trucks, but never a camper setup, which they spec'd it based over the axle specific weight by pound and then tuned it that way, which is really cool. It's a really robust system. And then going back, it was a quad cab commercial F350. I didn't want anything fancy.
Yeah.
I don't like chrome and all the packages. And I have twin 3-year-olds. So it's like they destroy anything that they get in. So there's going to be gummy bears wedged in the seat. So I don't want leather. I don't need any of that. So cloth, all commercial. And then coming back, the Bowen Customs drawer system. I think the coolest thing about the Bowen Customs drawer system is the space directly behind the quad cab.
Yeah.
Which gives you, I think it's I think it's 15 plus inches. You could fit a 37-inch full size spare
nice.
in that void,
in that little
in that section, which is cool. I actually talked about it yesterday, but I have an overlandish base camp tent, which is massive. It's pretty big, but it could fit directly behind there. So for base camping, I could set up a tent on the ground and then take the rig to go kind of out and about, right?
Yeah.
If the scout's kind of pulled off of it, or even if it's on it. And then Scout Camper, we went with the Scout Camper. The guys at Scout are great. It's a great company. It's they build them in Yakima, Washington, which is really cool. They're aluminum. They're fancy. I'm not used to that level of fancy. Diesel heaters, all the like, I mean, a bathroom, a kitchenette, all the stuff, a queen size bed.
Wow.
And people were like, "Oh, you think that's a kind of overkill?" For me, it's not, because I'll spend 150 days in that rig a year.
Wow.
We'll be. I mean, I'm driving that rig to Colorado for a week on Friday. Mm-hmm. As soon as it comes out of the shop here, tomorrow we're putting 37s on it, hopefully from Wheel Pros, and then we're rolling out to Colorado, go teach a 3-day class.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a big setup, but it's proper for us.
Yeah. Something you that's interesting that a lot of people don't. I'm noticing there's a trend in just the off-road industry, and part of it, I mean, it's expense, there's all these things, but the trend is for smaller bumpers, lighter weight stuff, which isn't a bad thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's fine depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
One thing that you hit on that a lot of people may not realize is that it is also it's why ARB as a company is ARB, right?
Yeah.
With which ARB's whole need, and if you go to Australia, there's so many vehicles that have bull bars and stuff on it, and they have that because kangaroos are effectively suicidal.
Yes.
They're literally just fine with jumping right into the front of a car. But the issue is you get in the Outback and you pop your radiator, because you mentioned that, cattle guard to protect that. If you pop your radiator, you have a really high probability of dying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You have no cell service out there, no stuff. Utah, the West, isn't necessarily all that remote, but there's areas, if you are going to explore, that you could have this problem come up, right? It's very important that you protect your radiator. So that's our design philosophy, not to jump into my thing, but our design philosophy just on bumpers is that we always want to make it so you do and can have that. If somebody chooses, they can have that full frontal protection. That's why our bumpers are generally a little bit bigger. Yeah. I'm noticing like the trend is to get smaller, and I'm like, why is everyone all about getting so much smaller?
Yeah.
Right. But I guess it looks sleek, it looks clean.
Yeah.
There's some sexy stuff about it looking small and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like you need a little bit more bulk if you're going to get that full frontal protection from an animal. I mean, nobody wants to cream an animal. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good. But man, getting stuck out in the middle of nowhere, or even on the side of the road in a bad snowstorm and stuff like that, you get the wrong blizzard, it can be rough.
Yeah.
So
I would never, if somebody asked me like, hey, what's the recommendation for a setup? I don't think I would ever put anything but steel and always go with a loop on the front end of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Like the weight that you sacrifice because you're worried about your low capacity, which is the thing, that's where you put your weight. That's where you want to have the weight, because especially if you're an overlander doing remote overlanding in places, like you said, where you're away from infrastructure on purpose. I'm not like overlanding to get into more people and more infrastructure. I'm trying to get away from it. So and I've done it. I grew up Jeeping in North Carolina in my TJ, and everywhere I've been in my TJ that I've had for 24 years now, in North Carolina especially, you smack a white-tailed deer with that, with no loop on the front end of your vehicle, it will the radiator, it's almost like it's outside the vehicle. It's like right there. You can see it through the grill. It just smacks it and it will destroy your front end cooling system, and you have no options. There's no options after that. And so, we're talking about being prepared, like the idea of a winch. Most experts will tell you they've never really used a winch unless they're pulling somebody else out. And that's the right mindset. That's the right protocol. But it's the same thing with the loop. It's like, man, can you imagine the one time you said, oh yeah, I want the bumper. Do you want a loop or not? No loop. and then you smack a deer or an elk, and you're like, oh my God. One decision, I could have added the loop, and it's not a big deal. It's like add the loop every time.
I mean, just right there. I mean, setting aside the expense of it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The front end of cars is not getting they're not getting cheaper.
They're not.
They're adding so much more plastic. I mean, it's the necessity of aerodynamics that's really driving the the miles per gallon kind of issue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing all this stuff, is they're just trying to boost every ounce of efficiency as they can.
Yep.
But it's making that front end more and more and more expensive just constantly.
Yeah.
So it's not only, survivability, there is a sizable expense.
Yeah, and if you look at it, the front end of most vehicles, especially with new safety systems, the whole front end is meant to crumble and take profound impact. But it's not rating deer impact, right?
No,
so
sir.
that impact, at like 1/100th of the impact it's made for, will just send it through that bumper system. I mean, you look at a Tacoma, you look at a Forerunner. I've had all those. When you pull off the piece of plastic, you're like, this piece of styrofoam is all that's there. It's like, yeah, because it activates your airbag, and everything else is meant to crumble in place. So when you think about like, okay, well, let's look at a deer, let's look at an elk, a 600 to 1,000 pound animal. Like, ooh, this is not going to work in your favor, right? It's something that happens all the time, especially you live in the West. But I'd say anywhere in the country, like North Carolina. I mean, I was just out in Iowa deer hunting. I've never seen so many deer in my life.
Really?
And I'm like, we almost hit 100 deer when we were there, because they're just out of control. The population is out of control.
I wonder what that's.
I think it's the moisture rate. They were telling me it's like something with the moisture, and they've been plentiful and breeding, but now they have more food than they've ever had. So they're just everywhere. There's
so
abundance.
it's in that population. I mean, in the West, because we've had the snow so crazy.
Brutal.
I mean, it's terrible. Like, I've seen deer everywhere.
Deer everywhere.
Up in my neighborhood and stuff like that. They're all over the place. Yeah, like deer, wild turkey and stuff. And I'm like, this is kind of abnormal for this time of year. But you look up the hill a little ways, and you've got 6 feet of snow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah.
They're on the roads.
Yeah.
There's so many dead. I've never seen so many dead animals in my life. It's pretty sad. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really tragic. I was noticing that the other day. When we were, did you drive down to Moab? Probably.
Yeah.
There's
that route going through Spanish Fork?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, that canyon or whatever. Deer everywhere,
just all over.
Oh my gosh, it was insane. That drive there was pretty gnarly too. That snowstorm.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that was gnarly. It's like you better have still everything on your vehicle going through there.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty. This has been a really good conversation. How far do you want to go on this? Do you want to keep going?
Up to you. Yeah, up to you.
No, this is great. I'm learning a lot. I like it.
Awesome.
I like what you do and stuff like that. I mean, I follow you guys on Instagram, stuff like that. I see a lot of the things that you're doing. I think it's pretty cool. So, and I mean, I think you're going the right track with what you're building.
Yeah.
So,
I kind of want to go lower on the Scout. Like the Scout's so tall.
It's very tall. That kind of shocked me.
Scary tall. I mean, it's like I have to look at like underpasses, like in small towns.
Yeah.
That have certain like 13 feet. I'm looking at it and going, oh, I might not make it underneath this. The other day, we were doing some stuff, and there's like the tree line, and even how the trees connect. I was like, dude, I'll rip the whole thing off of this. I don't think it's meant to be on a rig that has 37s on like a, whatever the lift is. It's like a 10-inch lift from Carly. It's like,
is it that big?
It's not
but
huge,
it's big.
but it's big.
Yeah.
It's not small, but it's not big. But it's like I'm leaning on a lower profile setup. That's something like if you're in Canyonlands or Moab, you're fine. But if you're going anywhere in North Carolina, Washington State, like we do stuff in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
There's areas I couldn't even get because the trees. I couldn't even get it through there. So I think maybe a lower camper, like a pop-up maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's something I might do is pop up.
I'm hoping, and this is my prediction for the overland industry is I'm seeing and I'm hoping that what you're going to see is people moving towards a little bit more simplicity, a little bit more lightness. I mean, It's always been important to be lightweight just because of the load ratings of your vehicles and stuff like that. But at the same time, like modularity helps. I just think you're going to see more movement towards that. Like if you can afford a dedicated overlander, that's fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some great ones out there, but for a lot of us, it's pretty crazy to do that kind of thing, right? It's like, okay, getting a tent and a bed rack, it's nice and stuff like that. And you get that set up. Unfortunately, too many of us end up just being a mall crawler 99% of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of kills the utility of the truck. You know what I mean? So I'm working on trying to make it so things are a little bit easier to remove. Tents and stuff like that, it's like it becomes your storage spot for your tent. You know what I mean? And it's like, why store your tent there? Tents a lot of them are heavy. I love these little tents that like the guys from C6 Outdoors are building.
Yeah.
They can be a ground tent, or they can be, laid out on a rack. They're 26 pounds.
Yeah.
It's a simple way to go. I just think it's really neat because there's a lot of technology that's being added versus like when I see people that are doing these tents, we put a tent on a Tundra, and I'm not going to name names here, but this tent was the heaviest freaking tent I have ever. I was worried about putting it on. I'm like, this thing should not go on the back of this truck because it was so heavy.
Wow.
It took like 5 of us to lift it. And I'm like, this is not the route you want to go. You get a lot of people want to drive fast, right?
Yeah.
You get something like that that's big, heavy. I mean,
dude,
my rack's not going to break. Your bed's going to break. That's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? And you just, I'm hoping that that's what we see more of. I hope we see a trend towards more versatility. I think we're going to see that trend.
Yeah.
And I think that's all a good thing. But yeah, the big, that's a hard one for me. Like the camper thing, that's why I haven't jumped into something like that, is because I always look at these trails. I'm like, that's great for maybe a logging road.
Yeah.
But some of these tighter trails, I've been down them, and it's like, that's a hard thing to get down.
It's tough. And that's where I want to go. I mean, the kids, I'm typically taking the kids into places that are like off the reservoir. It's a camping location where it's designated.
Right.
I'm not doing a lot of, canyon lands and
open desert's pretty good.
Open desert.
You know what I mean?
But now I want to get in as they get older. I want to start exploring like the Pacific Northwest, California, and now I'm like, ooh,
tight trees.
This is going to be tough.
Tight roads.
Yeah, I think I need to do something a little bit more slimmer.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it too and go, if I can't get through a Chick-fil-A drive-through, that's a problem for me. Like I need to eat, and I want to get through a drive-through.
I was going to say, you can, on the logging roads, there's always the chainsaw, right? You just have bring the chainsaw along, get ready for it, but you can't really do that on Chick-fil-A's drive-thru.
That's true.
It's not really going to.
That's true.
It's not going to fly.
Yeah. They wouldn't give me a sandwich. I love Chick-fil-A.
It's good stuff, man.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
I like their salads.
I would buy stock in Chick-fil-A if they were public.
If it was a thing?
Yeah, if it was, I'd be a huge investor.
It's a great brand, man. They do a good job at running their show.
They do.
In-N-Out's another one. They do a great job.
Great job.
They
just do it right.
Yeah.
They don't overcomplicate the process.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have too many options. It's just like, this is it. This is what we're doing. And, coupon codes in the winter time for Christmas, and, peppermint milkshakes, just basic, simple stuff. I think that's how you run a business. Just keep it simple.
I'll tell you something that I love particularly about these companies is when you really look at them, because of they've got this amazing throughput, right? They've got this amazing system they've built up, and they've got this amazing throughput. And I was thinking the other day, like particularly In-N-Out, their burgers are still pretty cheap.
Yeah.
In comparison to everything else in the arena, their stuff is pretty cheap. They're not all around the country, right? You kind of have to be in the West to enjoy them. But what impressed me so much when I was there last, and I was just thinking about it, I'm like, man, think of how many people these guys feed. Like
every day, churning,
it's amazing,
churning it out.
Yeah. And it's such a necessity.
Yeah.
Food is such a necessity. I'm like, these guys figure out a way to, in a very affordable method, feed people, a lot of people, and it's an interesting point of survival, right?
Yeah,
it's
it is.
Not like it's not the survival that we're used to. This idea, or when we think of survival, right? A lot of survival is like, okay, we talked about canning, being able to fire a gun and shoot a deer or something like that. Being able to do that thing, that's the extreme side of what survival is now. But day-to-day survival is still a survival, right?
Yeah, that's right. I never thought about it that way, but it's true. So it's like they're facilitating feeding people. And it's a collaborative effort. It's like, I am buying into investing in paying for this food from you with good options. And that there's a synergy there. Community is a huge part of survival as well, which is the cooperation between businesses and people, or people and people. And I think that's, a lot of people don't talk about that, but I think that's important, especially in urban dwellings, urban sprawl, cities, metropolitan areas, where you have dense populations of people, where it's not intended to be that way. You know, people in nature don't live on top of each other. Like that's
not at all.
It's not. It's very unnatural. But this, again, I would say it's a synergy of a relationship that, we're going to have a form and method. You pay us, we will feed you. That's the same as like a camp kitchen, buying into the fact that, hey, we're going to be the food guys, the chuck wagon, and we're going to provide food for the people that are there. And I like In-N-Out. It's like, if you actually look in comparison, the meat is all natural. There are no preservatives, and they don't even use oil when they cook the beef.
Yeah.
They use peanut oil for the fries. So it's like the healthiest of the options. That's just doing it right, just like Chick-fil-A, just doing it right. Yeah. Now I'm hungry. Now I'm gonna eat.
Those guys, I'll tell you, it's those guys, and I also love whoever the dude is that I used to know his name actually, but the guy that invented top ramen.
Yeah.
I mean, like that guy should really get sainthood. You know what I mean?
He's fed a lot of people.
He literally has fed a lot of people for very cheap. The amount of college students that we have, the amount of, you never really think about that side of it, right? No. This infrastructure that exists, and there's select innovators that exist in this world that really brought us a lot of stuff. Like that's one of them. Whoever the guy is that brought us top ramen, he's one of them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And camp food too. I mean, for top ramen, like in a camp setting, man, somebody pulls off that and you just got it boiling over a fire. It's like, that's the best food that you can eat. It's better than like all that dehydrated stuff. It's even though it's dehydrated, it's like super good.
Yeah.
We must be hungry.
I think we're getting there. Yeah, we're getting towards lunchtime. So, well, let's talk the side of this that comes to you as the entrepreneur, right? Because we kind of talked about you getting into the space that you're in, but you're an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And that's what you are. Was that after military, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to start a business. Oh, that sounds fun. What was it?
I grew up in business. A very small business. My mom and her sisters had businesses. My mom had a beauty salon. She turned our garage, that was a dirt floored garage.
Is this like North Carolina?
Yeah, this is North Carolina. And just converted that dirt floor garage, poured concrete, set up one chair, and did that for 10 years.
Wow.
And then she took that one chair into multiple chairs, and now she owns one of the biggest spas in her town of Fayetteville, North Carolina.
That is so cool.
It's awesome. And it's like, growing up in that, one thing I identified that made you successful in business is work ethic. So a lot of people think, oh, I could be an entrepreneur if I just follow the habits of successful people. Like they wake up and they cold plunge and they do all these things. It's like, that's not what makes you successful. Like the most successful entrepreneurs in the world have horrible bad habits. Like Elon Musk drinks like 50 Diet Cokes a day. Like he's got horrible habits.
Yeah.
What does make them very good is consistency and staying in it, disciplined for a long period of time. Like everybody expects immediate results. So when I went into this business, I knew that this was going to be a difficult undertaking. Because preparedness as a company didn't exist. Survival did, but it was like the bushcrafter, right? It was like the guy teaching people how to make friction fires in the middle of the woods in North Carolina. Like that was the thing. But I don't look at that as business. That's like a sole proprietorship, and sole proprietorships are very different than actual companies or businesses that are growing and evolving, where the plan out the gate, it's like, how do we scale?
Right.
Like the entrepreneur who's doing bushcraft, he's not thinking about his 5-year plan and acquisition. It's like, so my plan and my attempt at it was very different. But and I thought I would be good at it because I was good at marketing in the military. Because in the military, if you want to do the best operations, like the best missions, you got to sell yourself. And something I realized about most men in my field of special operations, they weren't good at selling themselves. So they weren't good at saying, hey, chief of base, the head CIA guy. They weren't good at saying, hey, I have this capability. Like I would do spreadsheets. I don't think I've ever said this out loud on a podcast. Right? I would do spreadsheets on our resumes of all the operators that I had on my team. Like in Libya, I was the team leader and I had 3 guys. And I did spreadsheets of all our capabilities, all our combat experience, and I would put them together in packets. And I would give them to the chief of mission, who's the ambassador of the of the specific Department of State embassy, and then I would give it to the chief of base, the head of the CIA. I said, hey, here's our capabilities. If you need us to do work for you, we are here and we want to work. And they would be like, holy crap, like nobody's ever done this.
I was like, this is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I'm like selling myself
to
do the job.
Well, that's the thing is like, I didn't even know that was kind of a thing. Was that kind of a thing? Like if you wanted the good stuff, you had to actually kind of fight for it a little bit?
It's actually weird it's the only way. I mean, you're either proactive or you're reactive, right?
Okay. In
a reactive situation, the mission would come down and they would say, who are our assets? Who do we have? And they go, well, we have this team. Like, well, who's this team? Like, we have this team. Who's this team? And they would make that decision really uninformed because they would just take somebody else's word for it. But if you're proactive, you let people know, hey, I want to get in the fight. And that was my mentality my entire military career. Like, the only reason I'm serving is because I want to fight. And like, well, there's no fight. Like, I don't want to serve then. I'm not going to be here. Oh, there is a fight? Oh, I'm all in. Let me be proactive. So I used to be good at marketing me and the team to go to work. And if there was something that needed to be done, I was proactive in saying, hey, do you guys need help with this? Like, I could help you. So when you take those things and like let me give you a prime example. When I was a team sergeant in 10th Special Forces Group in Colorado, I used to make my team, like I'm 6'1", my team guys were like 6'2" to 6'6", massive, like look like Spartans, like really fit, accomplished, capable dudes, just like rock stars. So I looked at them one day and I said, hey, I went to my company commander and said, hey man, I want to do this thing with my team once a month, a project. And they said, yeah, so what's the project? I said, I want to take them to an elementary school and I want to build a relationship with an elementary school. I want to bring them in and I want to do projects. I want to clean up the school grounds. I want to eat lunch with the kids. If the teachers want us to talk to them, we will. But I want the kids to see us interacting with them, especially in our own community at Fort Carson, Colorado.
Okay.
At Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? Like nobody's ever done that. Like that's kind of weird. I was like, I just made it up because I want us to be involved in helping the community. But I want my guys to learn through that experience because I want them to understand how important it is to give back. Because my mom, even as a day-to-day surviving entrepreneur, was giving back on like Thanksgiving. She would go to Sam's Club and buy as many turkeys as she could afford, and then gave them to families that were poor. And we weren't rich. We weren't even. I mean, we were probably under the poverty line. I mean, we weren't doing great. We didn't have a car until I was 16 years old.
Wow.
My mom didn't have a car until I was 16. So I did that, and that was a profound experience for both my team guys, for the school, and collectively, I realized every plan should involve a way of giving back.
Yeah.
Philanthropically. So if you make money, you should have a plan to give money. And that's just how I was raised. So when I took all those things and applied it to business, my business plan was based on my value, my character, my experience. It wasn't based on a protocol from a Fortune 500 line out of business. It was basically, hey, if I do these certain things like value proposition, if I give people value, they're going to give back. How do I know if it's working? Well, one day I think I'll know, but I won't know until I know.
Right.
And so that was a methodology I went into the business with. All of those things is how this business kind of unfolded, where it's like just me teaching people. You know, I got the King of Malaysia's contract for a contract for Fieldcraft early on, and then we're a 50 employee company growing and thriving. It all started with the idea of like, hey man, here's some principles. Let's apply these and see where this goes. Because I had no idea. We were pioneering a space for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's not from what you guys do. I don't really. I mean, you probably know who your competitors are, people that you work around with that in that space, but you, to me, as far as everything that I've seen, are kind of you.
Yeah.
You guys are a very unique brand, specifically what you're doing. I mean, when you're, I have a friend who, Special Forces Colonel, his name's Randy Watt. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of Randy, but he was chief of police of Ogden for a while and stuff like that. He retired and everything like that. He has his own training company and stuff like that, but his training is much more, it's the sexy side. It's guns, it's tactical training, it's the fighting, it's all that kind of stuff. And that's where his world in. If I brought up canning to him, he'd be like, no, it's not going to happen.
Maybe tomorrow.
Right? Yeah. But I mean, it is a unique skill set. What you guys bring to the table is very unique versus what's out there. I mean, you can go to you can go to Gunsight, and there's all those places you can go down and learn all sorts of gun techniques and tactics and whatever. But there's not too many places that with your focus, it's more of just survivability, worst case scenario, and knowing it. I think it's, when you say lifestyle, you said lifestyle, and I think it's kind of like the lifestyle point is just being situationally aware and driven. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And when it comes to business too, I think for me, one of the biggest things it's having that constant drive. There's something just in you that's kind of like, even when things are just terrible and you don't want to wake up, you get up.
Yeah.
You just get up. And in fact, generally it's like you'd much rather just go to bed and sleep in if you could, but you're going to wake up early and you're going to start tackling it, right? You're going to be like, okay, let's face, we've got all these things went crappy. Great. Let's face them. Let's work on them. Let's break them down and let's move to the next step. That's what I feel a big part of being an entrepreneur is.
It is, for sure.
So,
yeah. It's like one day at a time sometimes. And, people don't understand, when you start a business out the gate, everybody wants something from you. You're taxed by the federal government, by the state, by name the board, name the commission, name the organization, the bills, the overhead. So what I found is a lot of people say, oh, I could start a business. And my advice is do so. Do that. And then I will tell you, I told you so in a short period of time, because it only takes a few months, maybe years, to navigate the understanding of what entrepreneurship really is.
Yeah.
Like you said before the podcast started, a lot of people think it's sexy.
Yeah.
And they fall in love with all the attributes that they see on the surface. That's typically a marketing strategy, right? Like, I'm doing this thing and it must be nice to have this thing or do this thing. And it's like, that's part of it, but they don't see, you working your own books until midnight. They don't see you hiring and firing because the turnover rate's 60+%.
Yeah.
They don't see you, trying to make ends meet while trying to navigate how you're going to make enough revenue to pay the bills and also pay your employees. Those challenges persist in every entrepreneur experience. It's rare to not have that out the gate for an extended period of time. And that time, most people think, oh yeah, I start a business, 6 months, I'm going to start seeing results. Try 10 years.
Yeah.
Like 10 years is a minimum.
Yep.
Like, come to me, and if you ask me for business advice, I'm going to say whatever you have, if it's a good idea, you're willing to commit, you're willing to put in the hard work, the ethic, and you're willing to adapt at the speed of business, I'll see you in 10 years.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where you're at. And most people, if you would tell them they would have to commit 10 years of their life in order to be successful, they wouldn't do it.
No.
And I've seen hundreds, now it's hundreds over the near decade of me being in business, hundreds of business that have come to me who said, we have this idea, we have this thing, we want to do this. And they started doing it. They got bored, they got complacent, or they just didn't have it in them. And now those businesses don't exist. So it's rare to actually grow up in business and then have other brands and companies of businesses that are still around. It's super rare.
I think that's what they say. I think I'm probably getting a false statistic, but it's something like 90% of all
It's high.
businesses
Yeah,
fail within
that's
the
about
first
right. Yeah.
5 years or something
That's
like
about
that.
right.
It's either
Yeah.
5 years or 1 year, something like that. It's a huge number. And if you survive past that 5 to 10 year mark, that's like, give yourself a,
Yeah.
a pat on the back, because you're doing something that very few people
Yeah.
are being successful at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I have people ask me this all the time because they see what we do, they see what we make and stuff like that, and they're like, "Wow, this is a great business you've got here. This is a lot of fun." A lot of people, I think they trip out on me because they see that what I do, and then when they found out that I started the company, I founded it, they're kind of like, "That's weird," because I don't know. It's hard to judge yourself when you're inside yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I probably get a little bit more of, I can see how I was by looking at my kids a little bit,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I'm a little bit of a nerd, is the reality of it, and it's kind of like it's what I do isn't that is I think it's cool. I like what I do.
Yeah.
People are often surprised when they find out that I do all the design work and I develop my own product and I know how to run all the equipment and stuff like that. It kind of
Yeah.
surprises them. I'm like, yeah, that's being an entrepreneur.
I was gonna say, like, that's literally an entrepreneur. You
That's what
should know
is.
it all.
It's not you just being able to go, well, just hire somebody and they do it, and I'll sit
Yeah.
in the office and
Yeah.
hang out.
It's basically a scale and outsourcing yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you should have done all the things, and because in scale, when you advanced in that position, your time now is reallocated into something not necessarily more important, but it's reallocated where now you say, okay, I was running that machine. Now I'm going to focus on marketing. Now I'm going to hire a guy to run that machine.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, like, you're just constantly working yourself out of a job as much as possible, right?
It's true.
And I've reallocated. I have people that do everything for me now, and I still am completely swamped. So it's not like you outsource the time and you get it back personally.
Mm-hmm.
You just reallocate it to something else more invested in the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, like doing things like this, which is awesome.
Yeah. It is awesome. This is the fun side of it.
This
right?
is the fun side of it.
You get
yeah,
to network,
for sure.
you get to meet new people, you get to have conversations. Which, speaking of which, I'm curious, are you doing any of like the Overland Expo shows? Are you going to be doing that stuff?
I'll be at all of them.
Nice. Okay.
So I'm doing Overland Expo all 3 days, teaching some classes. I'll have my whole team out there. It'll be really fun.
That's the one in Scottsdale. You'll be doing that.
Yep.
Or, is it Scottsdale? No.
Flagstaff.
Flagstaff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so I'll have a booth in Expedition Overland's booth, their big booth. We have a tent in their booth.
Okay.
And then we have our prime booth over by the motorcycles this year. And then I will be at Touratech's big motorcycle show in June for a week, because we've been in Overland since we started Fieldcraft Survival, but because we teach Overland mobility experiences, which teach survival, first aid, recovery, maintenance, all the things. And then we're kind of going into motorcycles a little bit more because it's a good market. It's a good market of good people who do a lot of remote work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're out in the backcountry doing different trailheads and different trail systems that there's no reception.
Yeah.
So we're educating in those areas, and we're doing some equipment, some soft goods in those areas as well.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, we have. I was checking on that. I mean, we're going to do the three primary ones. There's the one in Colorado too. The one in
Asheville, North Carolina, or North Carolina.
Yeah, I won't be doing that one.
We won't do.
That was a little too far for me.
It's too far. It's like you got a convoy or a ship. It is logistically very tough to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one I've wanted to do that, but I mean, it's an area that I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth. At least for me. I mean, the East Coast is kind of like, I know we ship a lot of stuff to the East Coast, and it gets expensive.
Yeah.
Florida is insanely expensive, apparently.
So expensive.
I don't know what the deal is with. Apparently, Florida doesn't produce much. Is what I hear.
Yeah, they import everything almost. Yeah.
So that's kind of rough. Nothing. The trucks go in, but they don't bring anything out.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a crazy thing. But
yeah,
I think to me, just looking at you definitely have, like I said it before, perseverance.
Yeah.
That seems to be something you've got to just have to make entrepreneurial ship work. You know what I mean? It's very difficult. I have a lot of friends that, I shouldn't say I have a lot of friends, but I have several friends that they're third generation, right? Second or third generation business owners. So their grandpa started it, their
Yeah.
dad built it, and then here they are. Some of them are extremely successful, right? Because they're just maintaining a system.
Yeah.
And that's great that they're doing it. They do face their challenge, but it's interesting watching the family dynamics in some of these too, where it's just kind of like you've got brothers and family that have to fight one another, or have to make their way. And what's interesting is you always tend to see, I don't say you tend to see it, but there's not a ton of companies that last too much past that third or fourth generation.
It's tough.
Because it's just like all the information you collected from starting your business to growing your business is so vital into making good judgment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To see the path that you need to go. It's so vital to have had that struggle. I think that's just in general. That's part of survivability in general. You know what I mean? Is having that struggle. I mean, if you were in the special forces, you had to do all sorts of stuff to make it through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get to that point to where like, okay, now I can operate, right? Which I don't know what drives somebody to do that, by the way. Is it because it looks sexy, or is it or is it like what drives somebody to want to do that stuff?
I think more so it's probably that. I personally, I grew up, my dad was in the Army. My uncle was in the Navy. And I grew up watching all the movies, and I thought they were cool. And I grew up playing guns and playing war, and it was part of the culture that I was immersed in. Like me and my cousin, built forts, and we watched A-Team, and we watched Navy SEALs.
The A-Team, that was good stuff.
It was great. It was great shit. But I think part of that, that's the influence that is Hollywood or Western culture in influence. Like
makes it very sexy.
It makes it very sexy, and then you get into those jobs, and they're sexy. I mean, they're substantial, and but I never looked at them as. I think a lot of guys look at them as ways of life versus professions.
Okay.
And I never looked at it that way because I realized, like, man, this is a job, and I honestly didn't want the Army to define who I was through a lifetime. Like I know a lot of guys who their entire military stint, 4 years, 3 years, one combat rotation, 15 years, 20 years, their entire life is defined by that experience. And sometimes I forget I was in the Army. It doesn't even feel like running a company and doing all the things that I do. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. I forgot I did that. Like, oh yeah, I was in the CIA. Like none of that stuff kind of defines me now, especially moving forward. I mean, I felt like you're an old guy if you're in your 40s, and now here I am in my 40s, and I'm like, man, I got a lot of life ahead.
Yeah,
I got 2 3-year-olds.
You're like in your prime.
I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's like I got 2 3-year-olds, and on the business side of it, I do think I was just hanging out with the U-Haul son, Stuart, who's the son. His dad kind of took it from his grandfather. His grandfather started it after World War II, and U-Haul's been super successful. When you look at that, he's just as passionate as the grandson of U-Haul as I imagine the grandfather was when he started it.
Yeah.
Except he didn't have to go through that struggle, and he knows that. I mean, he communicated to me about it when we were eating lunch. I mean, his granddad drove. They didn't have this idea or understanding of how interstate transfers of any equipment took place. And he was one of the first guys in hauling vehicles where this guy was like, hey, I need to borrow this truck. Is there any way I could like drive it to this location and drop it off? He's like, I don't know, but let me look into that. And then he went to a gas station, and he had a piece of paper and a binder, and he said, hey, would you guys be interested in like receiving this and then potentially letting it go through somebody else, passing through somebody else's hands?
Interesting.
And he even did blind cases of it where he would give the folder to the person who was renting the vehicle.
Yeah.
The guy would drive it across state lines, and he would get to a gas station and hand it to the gas station owner. And in the packet that was sealed, he would open it and it says, if you're reading this, congratulations, you're a U-Haul dealer. If you accept the terms of this, sign this, accept the vehicle, and do the thing. Like a shot in the dark. Like a complete shot in the dark. But if you're a gas station owner and you read it and you went, I make money off this and all I have to do is park this car in the back, yeah, we'll do that. And like, you imagine where we were at in our beginning entrepreneur experiences, like trying to innovate, trying to be different, trying to market, do all those things. And then 3 generations down the road, you're just falling into processes.
Yeah.
It's like, so when I run my business, I actually think about that for my children. I go, well, my son, I don't want him to potentially be in the Army if he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
Like if he doesn't want to join the Army and have a resume for tactical gunfighting, then he shouldn't do that. But he's also a guy who needs to be running the company.
Right.
So does he want to run the company? If so, I need to set this thing up for him. And so I think about that often. It's like, what's like legacy for me is silly, like that whole idea and concept of legacy. But what I get about it is it's about what you leave behind for your children or your children's children. And I think about that often when I make decisions in business.
Yeah. No, that's it's a super good point. I have to think about that quite a bit too. Legacy does matter.
It does, yeah, for sure.
I mean,
it affects decisions now.
Yeah.
It should.
Yeah. It really should. And I think it does. For me, it does. And I just think, legacy is definitely one of those things that matters for sure.
Yeah, we're getting old. We're not going to be around forever.
No, you're not. Like a friend of mine, I had dinner with him a little while ago, and he's one of these dudes that he's pretty well off, right? This is grandpa started the business, dad built the business. Him and his brother kind of inherited it and everything like that. He got the education to build it and stuff. But we were having lunch, and he looked at me. He's like, dude, I'm almost 50. And I'm like, yeah, you are almost 50. He's like, can you believe that? And I'm like, yeah, just the other day, we were skiing at Snowbird, and you know what I mean? As teenagers being stupid. And here you are 50 and you're half broken and busted. And, you know what I mean? It happens super fast,
It happens fast, man.
And then it's like, so how many more good years do you got? You got 20, hopefully maybe 30 good years. That's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
You're past that half-life. So it's like, you got to make it count at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, legacy does matter. And then it's like, how are you passing whatever you've got, whether it's just intelligence, whatever value you bring, how are you passing that to your next generation? So that is going to continue.
Yeah. It's important questions to ask for an entrepreneur or a person in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what is, not that you have to tell me all the deep, dark secrets, but what's next for Fieldcraft Survival? I mean, what's the direction you guys are taking it?
So a lot of the things we do in person, which is important to us. So we train in 4 to 6 states a weekend.
Okay.
And we have products, obviously direct to consumer, that we sell. We do events. We do preparedness seminars. One of the things that we wanted to do is virtual online learning. So I tried last year. Yeah. I said to myself, well, like, a lot of people want to train with us, but they can't afford to fly to Utah and then pay for a pretty expensive course. Like they can't afford that. But if offered the opportunity, either mobile or on TV, if they could tune into an app and get education, inspiration, entertainment, they potentially would sub to that. So we started an LMS through a company, and it just didn't work out because the same training that you take for a company that my employees take through HR, it's not the same kind of training format that people would want to get in how to defend your life in the worst case scenario, or how to apply a tourniquet or first aid. So we had to develop that from kind of scratch. And so we have been working on an app. That app drops June 6th, which is D-Day.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's the same day my book releases, which is called Prepared, a manual for worst case scenarios. And that book is 2 years in the making. It's through Penguin Random House, which is, publishers that publish Jordan Peterson, and so it's been a long road. I just finished the audio recording yesterday, and
nice.
It was brutal.
You're gonna be an author, dude.
It's pretty cool. We've already sold 5,000 copies, which is really cool because we pre-sold them, and so that's happening on the same day on June 6th. And those are the big reaches that I'm super excited about, because it's like, will we hit the New York Times bestseller list? There's a potential.
Yeah.
Will we hit the lower list? There's a potential. And why is that important? Well, because we're having the opportunity to converse about preparedness to a larger and broader audience. Like people who aren't in our little echo chambers who are already into the things like overlanding, off-roading, hunting, backcountry adventure. It's like, who are these people that aren't our customer that potentially will pick up a book and go, huh, these guys got an app and they teach education like in family preparedness? That's pretty cool. That's what I'm hoping for as we kind of evolve in the future.
This has been a great podcast.
Yeah,
it was
thanks
a great
for
conversation.
having me.
I love podcast. I just love the, like, I'm like, somebody will listen to this, right? People will listen to it. And I just think it, like this, maybe this is a point of legacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting how much information, how many books that we fill with information, but then how much information can just be out there to assist people and be a part of people's lives, man.
Hope it helps somebody.
Yeah, I think so. I think it will. I think it's awesome that you wrote a book.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing that too.
I hope it does well. I hope it resonates with people.
Yeah, I hope so too. It'd be #1 New York Times bestseller would be pretty rad. Or however that works. I don't know how that works.
If it hit the list, it would be great.
It'd be awesome.
It'd be awesome.
I hope it does. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Whether it does or doesn't, man, I think it's probably going to be a good book. It's going to be worth reading and listening to. You have by the way, you have a really great voice.
Yeah. Voice.
I hate my voice personally.
Oh, your voice is
Yours
great.
is fantastic.
No. I hope it didn't feel that way when I was recording this freaking audio book.
No, this is going to be your audiobook's going to be super easy to listen to.
I hope so.
You've got a perfect voice for that kind of thing.
I hope so.
So you're going to be in good shape.
I hope so. You know, Ray, you ever heard of the Terminal List, the Jack Carr series Terminal List? So Jack Carr wrote my foreword for my book.
Oh, nice.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And Ray Porter, who reads Terminal List, who has a great narration voice. He's got like one of the best voices I've ever heard because he does all the voices for all the characters in Terminal List.
Yeah.
Ray Porter is reading the Audible foreword that Jack Carr wrote, which is really
nice.
Cool. Which is really cool. The foreword is really good. I mean, Jack's one of the best writers in the world. I mean, he's a New York Times bestselling author. It's really cool. But it's that I'm most looking forward to hearing that forward of the book.
Yeah.
It should be cool. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hear it now too.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be awesome.
Hopefully it's good, man. June 6th.
June 6th.
Yeah.
It's a good day to do it. Yeah, I think so. Your app drops the same day?
Yeah, June 6th. The app drops June 6th.
App drops June 6th.
Yep, all the same day.
So June 6th is the day.
D-Day.
D-Day is the day.
D-Day is the day, yeah. And it's funny, I didn't pick that date. The publisher's like, hey, we have a couple dates. Can you look at them? I was like, why did you guys pick June 6th? They're like, oh, it's just a Tuesday. That's a good day to do it. And I was like, but that's D-Day. And they're like, yeah, what's that? I'm like, you don't know what D-Day is? No. I was like, okay, well, it's got to be D-Day. So we'll do June 6th. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. This is going to be awesome. I'm excited. Awesome. I can't wait. I'll definitely stop by the shows.
Yeah, please do.
See you.
Yeah, we'll
chat,
see. Yeah.
Make sure everything's going good.
Awesome. The vehicle will be there as well. If you guys are listening to this and want to see the 350 setup, it will be there.
This thing's a beast.
I don't know how we're going to fit it in there. It is big.
Yeah.
It's cool, though.
No, I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It was a great podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
If you ever want to
me.
come on again, let's do more.
I'm right down the road.
Chat.
I love that.
You guys are close, so this has been great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.